Alright, welcome to this tutorial video. Today we're going to cover the power of using mates and creating assemblies. And we're also going to get into how you can bring in other design files, for example, from like a fastener manufacturer, like a Car, so you don't have to model those things yourself. So what we're going to cover today, I have an example already done, is we're going to make an assembly using the base we already have, but bring in the knobs that we already modeled and the arm we've already modeled and some pieces of hardware, such as the screw and this bolt. And see, we're going to do a couple things where we can evaluate how these things fit together. So the first thing you're going to want to do actually is get your own file from the base geometry that we gave you. So in Canvas, if you go to our Canvas page at the bottom of week 3, which we're in ugly lamp on shape files, that will take you to this file here. Actually, let me just open that just to make sure that that is truly where it goes. Okay, it gives you an option. You might not have the one that doesn't say ugly lamp given parts, but open the one that says given parts. Great, and now you're here. I'm going to close these because I'm actually having open in 2 tabs, so I'm going to close that and go back to the first one I was working in. And the first thing I want you to do is go make a copy of this. So duplicate and rename it so that like it has your name in here. And then you can move this to somewhere else that's not with everything else. Otherwise, we're going to see all your files in here. You're not going to have to design your own thing. You're just going to want to be able to work in your own file. So I guess if you do leave it here, that's fine. Just delete it when you're done. So anyway, take a moment, move it somewhere else, and then keep this file open. I'm going to hit cancel because I want to go back to this when I am going to work in this file, but you're going to hit move once you've selected where to move it or what new file to move it into. All right, I'm also going to delete my copy here to not confuse anybody and go back to my original. All right, so this is the base that was modeled up for you, and we're going to make one quick change, and that is we're going to go over to our feature list here and right-click chamfer and click unsuppress. So it actually puts in these chamfers here. We don't want those chamfers in there when we exported it to our DXFs, which we'll use on the router, because these chamfers we're not going to route in. We're just going to use a countersink tool and put those in ourselves. So that's something we're going to do manually and in person, not digitally in our file. But it would have messed us up if they were in there and we exported the surface, because then this hole would have been too big. But we do want it now because later in this demonstration we're going to bring in the screws we're going to use and see how they sit in there. So chamfer number 1 here is unsuppressed. Okay, so this file here is what they call a part studio. We actually want to make a new file that is a assembly. So I went over to the plus sign and I will click on create assembly, which will make a new assembly here. And what an assembly does is allows us to bring in parts from other part studios and give them some ways in which they hold together. And those are called mating features. So we have a Revolute mate and a couple other ones up here that we're going to use a whole bunch. But first we need to bring in some things that we're going to put in. So the main button upper left, which is insert, we'll click insert, and we're going to find the base that we just made a copy of, and that might mean you have to go back to other documents versus the current document maybe you're in, and find base, which should be base parentheses your name now, and bring that file in. And it doesn't really matter where I put it. I'm just going to put it in here. Okay, so we've brought in our base, which is actually 3 parts, but they're going to come in all together because it's all one part studio. The next thing I want to bring in is the arm that's going to go out and hold the wire and extend out to hold the light. So you go find that wherever you've kept that. Mine is in Ugly Lamp, and here's that arm. And I'm going to click yes and bring that in. It's going to drop it right in the middle of everything because everything was modeled around this origin, which is helpful usually. But I actually also want to bring that out so I can see it. So to get these 2 parts to connect, I first have to tell them where I want them to connect. And on shape, use a thing called mate connector. So right next to insert is mate connector, and so we want to tell on both parts where do we want those mates to take place. And so I'm going to click mate connector and rotate around and select this circle so that there's going to be a mate right here in the center of it. There's one, and great, I'm going to hit OK. The other one is I want to be right here on this side of the hole. So I'm going to select my mate connector again, select that edge, and hit OK. And now I have mate connector 1 and mate connector 2. Now I just need to tell them what is the relationship I want them to have between these 2 parts. And there's a set of relationships up here. We're going to use revolute mate quite a bit because these parts are able to revolve around each other. We can also lock them in, use slider mates. I would suggest just going through the tutorials that kind of go over more of what these are. But we're basically going to use revolute mates for all of these things. So I'm going to select revolute mate. And either I can go and try to click the actual mates here, but be careful. Sometimes Onshape will make another mate connector versus the ones you just made. So I like to make them first and then select mate connector 1 and then mate connector 2. And it's going to move over to where it went in that order. So it moved mate connector 1 to mate connector 2. If you did it in the reverse order, it would try to move this part to the other one. And everything lined up the way I expected it to. So I'm going to say great and click that green check mark. Somewhere in here I accidentally created an extra revolute. So I'm just going to turn that off. And now I've got my parts here. So let's see what this does. So I'm going to click on my arm, and I just want to be able to have it rotate around this center point. And so, whoops, I don't want to move it. I want it to rotate, so I have to grab the little circle arrow. So if I move it now, everything's kind of in motion. It's moving around the center point of where I grabbed it. And that's not really what I want to have happen. And so I'm going to stop wiggling it around there, hit Control Z to get it back. And these 3 parts are actually not held together. So I'm going to group them together just so that they don't move. So I'm going to select this part and this 3rd part, and then go up to our group tool, which is kind of like 2 squares, another square. That's not highly descriptive, but it's your group tool, and click group. And I can see that all 3 things are here in the group, and select OK. Let's see what that does. Well, now they don't move one at a time, but all the things move together. So I'm going to also select one of these parts. Let's go with the leg hole. And I went over to my assembly list here. And it doesn't really matter if I pick leg hole, or top because they're all grouped together now. And I'm going to tell it to be fixed. Just stop moving. Great. So now if I move this, oh great, now my part will move just around the pivot points because I've told one part to be fixed. I've told all 3 parts that it's in the group. I've told it that there's a revolute mate here. And so this is really, after I've constrained everything, the only thing it can do, which is great, which is what I want it to do. So let me just recenter that in my field of view. We're also going to be adding a lot of mates throughout this tutorial, so I'm going to turn off the view on a couple of these just so I don't kind of get confused of what's going on, because I'm going to add something else right on top of it now. So the next thing I want to add is the knobs. The knobs is what's going to hold the bolt that goes right through this hole here. So I'm going to go back to our insert. I'm going to go back to my other documents and my lamp and find a knob. There we go. That's a good knob. Great. Again, it comes in around the origin, so I can select my knob and move it up just so I can see what I'm doing. So this knob, when it was modeled up, and we didn't cover this when we made the knob, but you could have added it, is that there's a mate already in there. And so if I do this little drop down caret, I can see there's a mate connector already here, which is wonderful. If you know that you're going to end up making assemblies, you can go and build those into your Part Studio parts, and they will update when you bring them into your assembly. So you don't have to make all of these mate connectors when you come in. But I don't have one here. Now I could have made a mate assembly on this part already, but I didn't. So we're going to make a new one here on this front edge. Great. Check. And now we're going to make another revolute mate between this mate connector and the mate connector I just made, and it'll move down to where I wanted to and make that connection. So I'm going to hit OK on that green check mark. Be done with that. And so now I have the knob and the arm connected to the base in the way that it's going to be. Now, this was designed so that we don't run into anything, but it's good to start making these assemblies to see how is this all going to fit together. So for example, is it too tight to get my fingers in there? Do I need to maybe make this taller and start making adjustments to other parts of my design so things fit together? That's one of the powerful things about CAD, is making these assemblies, and then you can go tweak individual parts and have them update into your assembly. We're not going to go through adding absolutely every part to your CAD here, but I think you get the idea of how powerful mates are and how to make assemblies. Let me just turn a couple of those mates off because they're a little distracting. But I did want to show you how we can bring in hardware from other sources. So there are lots of companies that make nuts and bolts and other things, and they will just give you CAD parts. One of those is McMaster Carr. So McMaster Carr is a company that basically just sells hardware is the major thing, and some materials. They have a giant book that you'll find in a lot of shops, usually a big yellow book, just a giant catalog of stuff. But their digital catalog is great. And you can go and find hardware of an amazing assortment, and also get the CAD files for it. So I've gone through and dug down to find a 1/4, 20.5 inch long threaded hex head bolt that's partially threaded. And when I go into McMaster Carr, I can click on the part number here. And if I select a 3D step file, which is another type of CAD file, and click download, it'll just give me that part already CAD'd up. So I don't even have to make it, which is incredibly helpful. So going back to our file here, I've given you the number 10 wood screw, but I brought that in from McMaster Carr, and the 1/4 20 bolt. But you can bring things in yourself by going to the plus import and selecting the file you downloaded and hitting open. I'm actually going to bring it into this Part Studio just to show you how it comes in. It's working on importing it. Excellent. And now I've made this new folder that's called CAD imports and this step file. And so if I went File, Insert, it's currently generating a preview of it, but this is the file with its very long name. And there's the bolt. And so I can bring that in and use it in my design file. So I'm going to hit Close. And I'll go through this kind of quickly, but we're going to want to make another mating feature, another mate there, hit OK, and another mate here where it'll go, and hit OK. And I'm going to make a resolute mate and select the last two, and there it goes. I'm also going to click this reorientate second axis, and it actually will help me figure out to align it so it fits in this plastic part, and hit OK. And great, now I've got the bolt. And it would be helpful, right, to make sure that I have got the long enough bolt for me to add another arm. Let me move this around so I can see this better. So I can see that there's going to be another arm on this side, and then another knob, and in that fits a hex head nut. And just to make sure that it's long enough, so when I go buy a bunch of these bolts, because I want to make 1,000,000 of these lamps, that I have the right size. We're not going to cover that today, because I think you see where we're going with that. The other thing I want to show you is we're going to bring in a screw, and we're going to put it in this hole. So I'm going to go Insert. I'm going to find that number 10 wood screw. There it is. Again, we're going to make our mating features. I'm going to select the screw head first, and I want to make sure it's right in the center and on the top there. And hit OK. And make another mate here on the corner of our countersink on that edge, so it falls right in the center, and hit OK. And here I'm just going to use a fastened mate. It doesn't have to turn or anything. I just want it to be right on top of each other. So I'm going to use a fastened mate and select mate 6 and mate 7. Great. And now it's moved it to that hole. I'm going to turn off our mates so we can see what's happening. So I made a chamfer that's a little bit bigger. Again, you're going to make this chamfer yourself. But what I want to show you is that when you put like screws and stuff into a part, you want to make sure that there's a good amount of clearance. So we're screwing this top piece into the bottom piece, and it's been designed so that we have enough room here so that it doesn't sit too close to this edge and maybe split our plywood. But just to confirm that these things are all going together the way we want, I want to show you one more nice tool that you can use in Onshape, but any CAD package will have this. I want to evaluate and do a slice through and see a section view through all of my parts. So if I go up to this camera and render options, this is where we can change how we view the parts in our view screen. But I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and go section view, because I want to see a cross section through the thing that we're designing. And it's going to ask me to create, or ask for a section plane. Where do I want to make this section? Well, I want to make it parallel to this face, but actually I want to go right down the middle. So I'm going to select parallel to this face, and it's going to cut through everything. Then I'm going to drag the arrow and just push it back, and I can see how much the screw is going to extend down into the other piece of wood. I did 0.06, but I'm going to do 0.05, so it's right in the center, and hit OK. It even says, oh, this is red because they're intersecting, which normally would be bad, but we actually need the screw to intersect and stick right into that piece of material. But now I can quickly evaluate that a good amount of my threads are going to go down into this piece and securely hold them together when we screw them together. So that's how you might use section view, and you can leave it on if you want to keep working and modeling in this section view, or I can go back to the gray cube and turn view off, and now I'm back to my view. All right, so that was a quick overview of how to make assemblies, how to bring in parts from other files, perhaps ones that you've downloaded off the internet, and evaluate how your model's coming together, how your individual parts will be assembled, and then you can make changes before you end up putting them out into the real world until you get into fabrication. All right, and that's the end of this video.